The Galactic Assembly Hall was a cathedral of power. Towering spires of polished obsidian and shimmering alloy reached skyward, bathed in the cold light of distant stars. Delegates from over 300 species sat in layered arcs, their murmurs creating an eerie, multilingual hum. The air held the tang of ozone, a byproduct of the containment fields that kept the more volatile species separated. Ambassador Kara Holt sat at the central podium, spine straight, eyes sharp. The polished silver emblem of the Terran Republic gleamed on her lapel, a stark contrast to the lavish, ornate attire of her alien counterparts. She preferred function over vanity. Humanity had learned, through blood and fire, that appearances meant little in the face of real power. The session had dragged on for hours. Trade routes, resource rights, disputes over mining colonies. The same tired debates. But then, Lord Verx Thralok of the Vrax Dominion rose from his seat. A hush fell over the hall. The Vrax were feared. Not just for their military might, but for their cruelty. Tall, with armored plates running down his elongated form, Verx exuded confidence, the kind bred from centuries of dominance. His deep red robes swayed as he stepped forward. With deliberate ease, he clasped his hands behind his back and scanned the room, then fixed his reptilian gaze on Kara. His mandibles twitched, the Vrax equivalent of a smirk. "The matter of human expansion," he began, his voice a silk-covered blade, "must be addressed with the proper perspective." Kara didn't move. She already knew what was coming. "Humanity," Verx continued, pacing slowly, "has shown itself to be emotionally volatile. Primitive, in a way. Oh, I do not mean in technology. No, you have proven resourceful. Adaptable. But biologically?" He chuckled, a low clicking sound. "You are dangerous, yes, but only like cornered beasts. Loud. Unpredictable. But easily crushed." The silence was absolute. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others watched with thinly veiled amusement, waiting for a reaction. The Vrax Dominion was testing humanity. Pushing. Looking for weakness. Kara inhaled slowly. She could feel the heat creeping into her blood, but she had learned long ago that anger, when wielded properly, was a scalpel, not a hammer. She exhaled, her expression unchanged. "Ambassador Verx," she said, her voice even, "I wonder, do you insult us because you fear us? Or because you hope we'll prove you right?" A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. Verx paused, his mandibles flaring slightly. He had expected rage. Outbursts. Not this. "Fear?" Verx repeated, scoffing. "Hardly. I am merely stating facts. Humanity lashes out when provoked, but it lacks the endurance, the discipline, to hold power for long. Your history is riddled with war, is it not? Violence, bloodshed. Always quick to anger." He turned, addressing the chamber. "A dangerous liability, I should think, in matters of interstellar governance." The statement was calculated. The moment hung, stretched tight as a wire. Then, from the far side of the hall, a voice broke the tension. Deep. Amused. "Gods help you, Verx," said the delegate from the Zalth Confederacy, shaking his head. "When humans get angry." A whisper of laughter flitted through the assembly. Not at Kara. At Verx. The Vrax Enver's mandibles clamped shut. He had intended to humiliate humanity. Instead, he had made himself the subject of an unspoken warning. Kara smiled then, but it was not a kind smile. "You mistake patience for weakness," she said, rising to her feet. "A mistake many have made before you." She turned, her gaze sweeping the room. "And none of them exist anymore." She inclined her head. "This session is concluded." Without another word, she strode from the chamber, leaving behind only silence. Kara Holt sat in the observation lounge, staring out into the swirling colors of the nebula beyond Primax's station. The silence felt heavier than space itself. The insult in the assembly chamber hadn't rattled her. Verx's arrogance was expected. But she knew the Vrax never stopped with words. They escalated. The door chimed softly. "Enter." Her aide, Commander Elias Stroud, stepped in. His military bearing contrasted with the diplomatic decorum around him. He was sharp, efficient, and spoke only when necessary. "Ambassador," he said, his voice low. "We have a problem." She turned, her expression tightening. "Dr. Liu?" He nodded grimly. "Gone. His shuttle never arrived at the research delegation's quarters. Security sweeps are coming up empty." Kara's stomach turned to ice. Dr. Adrian Liu wasn't just a scientist. He was a critical envoy assigned to negotiate advanced tech exchanges. His disappearance was no accident. "Vrax?" she asked. "Highly likely. But they're covering their tracks well." Kara exhaled slowly, controlling the rush of anger. "Proof?" Stroud tapped his wrist pad, projecting a hollow screen between them. Surveillance footage flickered to life. A corridor deep within the diplomatic quarter. Liu walking calmly, followed by two cloaked figures. Then nothing. The footage cut out. "Signal interference right after the moment of abduction," Stroud explained. "Military-grade scrambling." Kara's mind raced. An open accusation would lead to political chaos. The Vrax knew it. They wanted humanity to lash out recklessly. Status of diplomatic channels? Official denial. Vrax released a statement claiming concern for the missing human and offering assistance. Kara clenched her jaw. Assistance. The audacity. "I want eyes on every Vrax vessel in orbit. Scrub their manifests, cargo, and crew rotations." Stroud hesitated. "If we push too hard." "I am not asking." She cut in, steel in her voice. He gave a curt nod and left. Kara rose, pacing the room. She had to be precise. Humanity's response would set a precedent. But she needed leverage. "Proof." Her comlink chimed. "Go ahead," she answered. A distorted voice came through. One of her deep contacts within the Zouth Confederacy. "We have intercepted something you need to see. Sending now." The transmission ended. Seconds later, a file appeared on her terminal. She opened it. And froze. Dr. Liu was strapped to a vertical restraint frame, bruised and bloodied. Verk stood before him, monologuing for his private audience. "Humans are so fragile," he sneered, striking Liu across the face. "But I wonder, Ambassador Holt, how long will your patience last? Show me your anger." The recording ended. Her fingers tightened into fists. Her mind cleared in an instant. This wasn't provocation. It was a challenge. Her comlink buzzed again. Stroud's voice. "Ambassador, Vrax flagship just sealed all outbound comms. High-level security lockdown." They were preparing for something. Or hiding someone. Kara keyed in a private line. "Director Hayes. Activate Operation Thunderclap." A pause. Then the director of Terran Intelligence spoke. "Confirmed. Rules of engagement? No open warfare. Surgical. Swift. Maximum humiliation. Understood. Moving assets into position." Kara closed the line. No hesitation. No second guessing. The Vrax had drawn first blood. They wanted humanity's anger. They would get it, but on her terms. Moments later, her door chimed again. Stroud re-entered, face grim. "There's more," he said, handing her a secure data stick. Kara inserted it into her console. Text scrolled across the screen. Verx's private communications. He had planned this for weeks. The abduction, the provocation, the staged insult, all designed to bait humanity into overreacting and giving the Vrax an excuse for military escalation. But Verx had underestimated how cold human rage could be. Kara looked up at Stroud. "Prep the black team. I want them ready to move within the hour." "Already done." She allowed herself one breath to steady her nerves. "What's your read, Elias?" He met her gaze. "They think we'll lash out blindly." "We won't." She nodded. Outside, the nebula swirled, serene and distant. Inside Kara Holt's mind, the storm was already forming. She tapped the console one last time and whispered to herself, Let them see what happens when patience runs out. The Vrax flagship, Dominion's Claw, hung in orbit like a predator waiting to strike. Inside its armored hull, Lord Verks reclined in his private chamber, sipping from a crystalline flask. His plans were unfolding perfectly. Humanity would either lash out and give him cause for a military strike, or swallow the insult and reveal their weakness. He smirked, certain of his victory. But halfway across Primax's station, Kara Holt was already reshaping the board. Commander Stroud's voice crackled in her earpiece. Black team deployed? No contact yet. Target areas mapped and locked. Kara responded calmly. Proceed. There was no room for anger now. This was the cold part, where precise decisions mattered more than emotions. She glanced down at the tactical display in front of her. 3 human covert teams were in place. A 4th team, composed entirely of non-human allies, had been activated at her request. The Zalth Confederacy, the Arask Combine, and the lesser-known but fiercely capable Grek Syndicate had all offered quiet support. They hadn't done it out of loyalty to humanity. They had done it out of self-interest. The Vrax had made enemies across the galaxy. Kara simply gave them a stage. Team 1 status? She asked over the secured channel. Approaching Vrax cargo hold. Energy signatures matched prisoner containment fields. Proceed. Silence only. No casualties. Verks wanted violence. Kara would deny him that satisfaction. Meanwhile, on the Dominion's Claw, subtle sabotage was already underway. Black Team's tech specialist, Callan, whispered over comms. Bypassing security firewalls. Shutting down internal surveillance in 30 seconds. Kara watched the readouts as sections of the Vrax flagship flickered offline. Team 2, move! They slipped into the ship's communications relay center. Within minutes, every private recording Verks had made, including the torture footage of Dr. Liu, was duplicated and transmitted to trusted contacts in the assembly. Evidence. Irrefutable, damning. The quiet part of the war was the most dangerous. Back in her command suite, Kara monitored the infiltration with a cold clarity. Her pulse never rose. This was what humanity excelled at: adaptation under pressure. Control in chaos. Team 3 status? Secured docking arm controls. Waiting for your signal. She gave it. Outside the Dominion's Claw, the docking clamps released without warning, isolating the Vrax ship from station support. No alarms triggered. No battle alerts sounded. Verks's flagship had been quarantined in silence. In his chamber, Verks's smug composure faltered as the lights dimmed. His comm screen blinked with alerts: unauthorized data transfer, system malfunctions, structural detachment. What is this? He snarled, slamming his fist on the console. One of his officers reported. Unknown breaches, my lord. Our surveillance systems are failing. Find them. But there was nothing to find. The infiltrators were ghosts. On Primaxis, Kara opened a private communication line to the Zalth delegate. Verks is losing control. The data will reach the assembly floor in 2 hours. Will you back the motion for sanctions? Gladly, came the smooth response. We've waited for this. Ensure the Arask Combine co-signs. I want him politically isolated before dawn. Consider it done. Kara ended the transmission. No bluster. No grand speeches. Just quiet efficiency. A new transmission from Black Team crackled in her ear. We have Dr. Liu. Alive. Weak but stable. Relief threatened to crack her composure, but she forced it down. Extraction route? Via maintenance corridors. No encounters yet. Get him home. Verks's control was unraveling. His arrogance, built on centuries of dominance, was now an iron shell with fractures spreading rapidly. And he hadn't even realized the worst was yet to come. Inside the assembly chamber's secure council rooms, Kara's carefully placed evidence was already being reviewed. One by one, ambassadors were receiving encrypted files, recordings of Verks's violations, the abduction, the brutality, the sneering taunts. She received confirmation pings, the Dreen Federation, the Core Alliance, even the traditionally neutral Sova Council. All aligning, all moving in concert. Verx's empire would not be destroyed by war. It would collapse under the weight of public disgrace. The comms pinged again. Extraction complete. Lou is aboard and secure. Kara exhaled. Stand down and exfil. No traces. She closed the channel and stood, allowing herself one moment to look out over the endless stars. Behind her, Stroud's voice was quiet. You've trapped him. Completely. No, she corrected, turning to face him. He trapped himself. We only lit the match. On the Vrax flagship, chaos erupted. Verx stormed into the command deck, face contorted with fury. How did they breach us? He roared. His officers had no answers. Systems were failing. Evidence had leaked. His ship drifted, severed from station support. His empire, untouchable for centuries, now trembling under the whisper of human retaliation. He slammed a clawed fist onto the console. Get me Kara Holt! But no one answered. She was already gone. And the storm he had begged for was on its way. Lord Verx paced his command deck, each step heavier than the last. Alarms flickered muted red across every console. His communications chief stared, wide-eyed, unable to stop the data hemorrhage flooding galactic channels. Verx's private recordings, his boasts, the footage of Dr. Lou's torture, all now public. Every whisper, every cruel intention he had hidden behind diplomatic walls was bare. He hissed, mandibles grinding. They were supposed to react with fists, not words. The humans hadn't started a war. They hadn't fired a shot. Instead, they'd set fire to his reputation. He spun toward his second-in-command. Contact the assembly. Damage control. Impossible, my lord, the officer stammered. They have closed diplomatic channels to the Dominion. No responses. Verx's vision narrowed. Isolation. He was being cut out of the very council he'd once dominated. On Primax's station, Kara Holt sat alone in her observation suite, sipping bitter coffee. The hour had come. The assembly was convening a closed emergency session, and for once, humans were not the ones under scrutiny. Her comm link chimed. Commander Stroud's voice. The vote tallies in. Overwhelming majority. Sanctions approved. Kara nodded once. No celebration. Only satisfaction. Status of the Vrax fleets? Stationed along their core worlds. Locked down. Several smaller protectorates have begun severing ties. The weight of centuries of fear was breaking, not with battle, but with exposure. Her terminal pinged. The Zalth Confederacy's delegate appeared, his serpentine features solemn. Ambassador Holt. The motion passed. The Dominion is now officially stripped of assembly voting rights and diplomatic privileges. And the trade embargo? Full. Kara allowed herself a breath. Thank you. The delegate leaned forward slightly. You could have asked for war. Many of us would have stood behind you. She smiled faintly. Wars are messy. But disgrace? Disgrace endures. The line closed. Her comms chirped again, another connection, this time from someone she hadn't expected. Verx. She hesitated for only a second before accepting. His image filled the screen. The arrogance was gone. His eyes burned with rage and humiliation. What have you done? He spat. Something you didn't expect, she answered quietly. You think this will stand? He leaned forward, voice venomous. The Dominion will recover. We will rebuild. Kara's tone remained calm, precise. Maybe. But not with you at the helm. The Assembly's sanctions are just the beginning. Your protectorates are fracturing. Your allies are silent. You're no longer feared, Verx. You're mocked. His fists clenched. I will not be remembered this way. No, she agreed. You'll be forgotten. He roared and cut the connection. Kara exhaled and rose, crossing to the wide viewport. Outside, the swirling nebula remained unchanged, beautiful and indifferent. Humanity had once been overlooked in the galactic order, young, loud, unpredictable. The other species had watched with amusement or contempt. But now, they understood. Her door chimed. Stroud entered. His usually composed expression carried the faintest trace of admiration. "We did it," he said softly. "No," she corrected. "He did it to himself. We just held up the mirror." Stroud's comm pinged. He checked the message and looked up with raised brows. "Unrest on the Vrax core world. Civil protests. Their media networks are turning on Verks." Kara let silence answer. He hesitated. "Was this always the plan? No military action at all?" "Always," she confirmed. "The Vrax needed to know there are consequences beyond force. Sometimes the worst punishment is watching everything you built collapse around you, and knowing you caused it." Stroud gave a small, respectful nod. "And Lou?" she asked. "Resting in medical. He insisted on recording a statement thanking the team. He said to tell you, he's proud." A flicker of warmth passed through her. Hours later, the assembly floor was abuzz. Kara stood on the central platform as delegates spoke in hushed tones. The speaker called for silence. "Ambassador Holt," the speaker announced, "the floor is yours." Kara stepped forward. Her voice rang clear, firm. "Members of the assembly. Humanity was tested. Not through diplomacy, not through war, but through provocation. We were called beasts. We were challenged to lash out. But I stand here to tell you, restraint is not weakness. It is strength. We did not strike with ships or guns. We struck with truth." She paused. "Let this be a lesson. For all of us. When arrogance blinds a leader, they do not fall from the blows of enemies, but from the silence of those they once ruled." The chamber fell quiet. Then, slowly, applause began. Not thunderous. Not raucous. Measured. Respectful. As Kara stepped down, the Zalv delegate whispered as she passed, "Gods help anyone who provokes your kind again." She offered a small, knowing smile. The storm had passed, not with blood, but with dignity. And across the galaxy, they finally understood. When humans get angry, they don't just fight. They destroy carefully, and leave nothing standing.